So we've got Jim, we've got Mike up, and we've got Dave. You guys want to flip coins on who wants to go first?
Does not matter.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Well, Mike's all huddled up over there with his arms crossed and looking all mad.
It's tired.
He's bored already.
Let's start with Dad, because every week when Les sends me, he's like, "Who's Dad?" on the call. But can you guys all see that with Dave Witt?
Yeah, I seen it where it says Dad. I was like, "Who is that?"
So
my father, can't you tell?
I only sent you that once, Amy.
Oh, you did. No, I have 2 times where you were like, "Who is Dad again?" Anyway, we were laughing. So why don't you go ahead and start, Dave?
Okay.
We haven't seen Dave on camera.
What's that?
We haven't seen you on camera tying a fly yet.
Well, I'm just shy.
Yeah. You've been lurking in the shadows.
Okay. First, I thought I'd show some hacks that I came up with that kind of makes things a little simpler. Amy, one time you were having trouble tying a dropper to your hook, and I came up with a nice simple way of doing it. And,
I want to see that.
Okay, can you see the hook?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm going to use this orange braid thread, and what I'm going to do first is just make a knot, start of a knot, put it around the hook, pull it tight. That keeps the line on the hook, so you don't have to worry about losing the hook. And then just do a simple improved cinch knot on it. My fingers would work.
It looked like you were doing a Davy knot there for a moment.
Okay, now you're gonna, let me get this straight. You're gonna do this in the middle of the stream when it's 30 degrees outside, right?
Right. And that's your knot.
Okay.
So I found it to be pretty easy, especially when it's cold outside. Not so easy to do on camera when you're backing up, but now, okay, another hack where you mentioned cold. This is what I came up with. This is a Schnell hook holder. It's got springs, so you can tie in the comfort of your warm home. And what I did careful measurements. I just stretched it out the length of my arm, tied my fly on one end, and did a perfection loop on the other. I don't know if probably doesn't show up.
No.
Well, might help if I put on my glasses. But the way you hook it up,
now I can see better.
Yeah. Okay. And of course, I got
the lines in the glasses.
I can see that.
Okay. And way you hook it up.
Hey, Dave, you didn't drink any beer before you get on site.
I think it's still in your
around your eye.
Yeah, it's still is wrapped around my glasses.
Oh, my eyes are watering. That was good.
Okay. You just hook it on one of the springs, wrap it, then hook it right into one of the little slots.
Nice.
Perfect for going out in cold weather. You tie a perfection loop on the end of your fly line or on your leader, and then just do perfection loop to perfection loop connection.
That's really cool.
You know,
Good.
in the early 1900s, most flies were tied like that. They were called Snell flies.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
and then I've done that a few times too, especially in the winter when it's cold out. It's a lot easier to use a Snell fly than tie them.
Okay. And another hack I did, I make my own indicators. What I do is borrow my wife's paper cutter when she's not looking, takes craft foam, cut it into strips, cut it to length, take an O-ring, slip it through there, take a second O-ring and put it through there. And you have a cheap indicator.
All right.
Nice.
Who was it last week that was having trouble with their indicator, hooking it up?
That was me.
it Nick but I came up with a simple solution to that one night about 2 o'clock in the morning when I couldn't sleep. When you put your line through the indicator, and you loop it around, okay, now you got a loop. You take a piece of thread or rubber band or nylon, put that in that loop before you pull it tight. And when you want to release it, you just pull on your little string.
It's actually good with the thingamabobbers indicators
Yeah.
because they lock in and they sit in and you can't get them off. So that's a good idea.
So
Okay.
what type of material are you actually using, like a foam?
Yeah, craft foam, but you get it at a Walmart or whatever, thin craft foam. The stuff,
2mm stuff.
it's just thin foam. You can buy just about anywhere.
So that's the same thing you'd use for making poppers with.
Right. You just cut it into strips, narrow strips, and it floats as good as the store-bought ones. And if you land one in a tree, you haven't lost anything.
So what do you connect it to make it?
All what I do is take an O-ring, slip the loose ends through the O-ring, fold it over, then take that second O-ring, work it over the little loop, and then put it down onto the foam. Can you see that, Walter?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So those are just rubber O-rings then?
Yeah, rubber O-rings. Get them at any hardware store or Walmart or whatever. And you can buy craft foam in any color, as you know, and it's cheap. I tend to go with the thinner craft foam rather than the thicker stuff. No particular reason, but okay. That's all the hacks I had for tonight. So if you got a problem solved, I'll solve it for you in the middle of the night.
I'll call you in the middle of the night.
Yeah, you do that. I'll have my wife answer. I found the material, something shipped to my wife. It's foam, and it's just some sort of packaging styrofoam, or not styrofoam, but but anyway, you can pull this apart and it makes for great, great little poppers or the bee that I'm going to tie tonight. So, so anyway, take that hook out. I'm using a scud hook. The only reason I'm using a scud hook is because I like the curve on it to it bends down just like a stinger would on a real bee. And first I'll show the flies I made. I don't know how well, they're not showing up real well, are they?
We got those, Dave. When you held it up, we could see them.
Oh, okay. Here's a
Hold it
little
still.
better,
All right,
better
that's
view.
a little out of focus.
Go back towards your vise. There you go.
There you go.
Hey, well, I
Okay.
can't see it now.
Nice.
But
Where'd it go? Oh, okay.
I came up with that one. I had an uncle who always taught me at a young age to when you have a problem, you don't pick the first solution you come up with without thinking of about 2 or 3 more. And the other fly that I had been tying used yarn, hackle feathers, and chenille. And I call that one the Wittenheimer 1, and the second one with the foam, the Wittenheimer 2. So I had a customer who called me Wittenheimer, and so anyway, start tying. Just gonna put some black thread down the hook. I've made them with and without legs, and with and without hackle feathers.
Hey, Dave,
Yeah.
tell the people how tall you are.
How far?
How tall you are. Your height.
Oh, I'm 6'2".
And when you go to the trout bus, what do you sleep in?
I sleep in my car.
What size is the car?
It's a Ford C-Max.
It's about as big as, it's smaller than a Volkswagen.
Oh no, there's plenty of room in there. Actually, that Ford C-Max isn't mine anymore. The switch over from electric to gas crapped out, and it was going to be $9,000 to fix it.
Oh, ouch.
So I'm now driving my wife's car, which is a 2010 Hyundai Santa Fe, and I bought her a new one. So anyway, what I did was build up the base where the hornet sting comes out, or the bee sting comes out. Just I don't know if that shows up. Just build it up with thread, and take my piece of foam, and I cut it at an angle. And then I anchor it down. Again, build up the thread a little bit. And then when I lift the foam and do a couple of thread wraps down the hook and put several wraps just to make it a black line. Do another one. I've caught more fish on this one, this version than the other version, so I won't demonstrate that one. And then cut the foam. And now what I'm going to do is just do a couple of half hitches. Take a yellow permanent marker. Color the foam. Take a black marker and make the head black. And then if you ever wondered what to do with all these little shark feathers on here, they make nice little wings. Just tie them on, and I personally prefer the tie it with the feather curving out away from the fly. If you look at a picture of a bee, come on. Oop, facing the wrong way. Kind of adjust the length of the feather. Tie in my next, the other side. Just the length. If you can see that. Okay. Then go ahead and tie it off. And it's done.
Nice.
It's a
Very nice.
it's a nice quick little fly, cheap.
Good.
I caught a lot of bluegill and some bass with that. I haven't made it out trout fishing with it, so
What's that foam again?
Craft, C-R-A-F-T.
Oh, okay.
Buy it in sheets like 8.5 by 11 or something like that at Walmart, and you can buy it in packs. It's just a real
Wayne's,
thin,
Hobby Lobby.
Okay,
just a
yeah,
real
I just
thin foam.
missed that. I must have stepped out of the room there for a minute when you were mentioning it. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. That's it. If you got any questions.
Nice.
Good.
So do you mostly target bluegill when you're fishing that fly?
Well, not specifically. I catch what I catch, and I haven't taken it to the trout stream. Last
okay.
year was a bad year for me for trout. I bought a stamp and never made it out once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, with my wife's surgery and stroke and all that stuff. At the end of the year, I was planning on doing a lot of fishing, and it just didn't happen.
Ugh, that's a shame.
In Nebraska, that fly is extremely useful and effective at catching bluegill and crappie. Haven't seen any bass on it yet, but just about everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to tie a couple and take them with me trout fishing Wednesday, so we'll see how they work.
Okay. Like you could use parachute post, or if you're lucky to find this foam, it's very it's a closed cell foam, and it's very compressible. That's why I like it.
That foam that you had, that you said your wife had from Crafts or whatever, or
Yeah.
what was that now?
Craft, C-R-A-F-T foam. You go to Walmart in the craft section, they'll
Yeah,
have a whole
I
rack of
understand. I
different
understand the sheath of the foam, the sheet foam, but you had something else that was like.
This something came in the mail that was wrapped with that to protect it.
Yeah.
Some sort of packaging foam. I like it because you can squeeze it flat, and it is very easy to wrap with. But parachute foam works just as well. I use this because I don't want to use up all my parachute foam.
Hey, Walt.
That almost looks like what an Asian pear would come in at the commissary or different stores.
Mm-hmm.
Fruit.
Hey, Walt, just keep on buying stuff from Amazon, and eventually they'll send you something like that.
Yeah. Buy something that this had a little vase or something in it. They just had the vase in the center, but it's very stretchy.
Okay.
I've also tied
wine bottles.
I've also used the shelf liner skid, non-skid material, and use them for eyes up front. It's a foam, so it floats pretty well.
Has anybody made ants out of that material yet?
I'm sorry?
I have.
This material, have you made ants with it?
Yeah, I have.
If you show one day on how to do it, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can also paint that foam with a black magic marker, make ants out of it. Make flying ants with a little wing. I also came across another foam. This is it goes in the bottom of a mechanic's toolbox. I like it a little bit better because I'll cut it on the diagonal and you have little triangles. They're a little bit bigger than the standard shelf or foam, but I like them both.
Yeah, the only thing I found is some of those shelf liner foams will pick up water and they don't stay floatable necessarily very long.
Yeah, I found that too. I just squeeze them and it seems like it helps. But this foam here, I made a fly and just dropped it in a glass of water, and next morning it was still floating. So
Chris and I actually did a test on this a while back because he was wondering if he could coat foam with either Sally Hansen's or we use some different. And I said, well, test it. And so he ran that test on treating foam, kind of closing up those cells on foam with either just a quick, it could be a top coat. Sally Hansen's also makes a top coat that's a quick dry, but it'll help on some of those foam patterns float a little bit longer.
okay.
But it is something, it doesn't weigh it down and it's not as heavy as trying to do a UV to seal it. But yeah, that's with those ants, that seems to work. And especially with the Walmart foam, which I use a lot, but you can even get some that has sticky on one side and you can make them all together for your hoppers. But that was great, Dave. Thank you. Good job in front of the camera tonight.
Yeah, thanks.
Give you all all right, so who do we have up next?
You want me to go?
Next. I'm good.
All right, Jim spoke up first because Mike's still huddled over there in a corner.
Yep.
All right, Jim, it's all you.
Okay, so I'm tying also another foam fly. It's called the STP Frog. It stands for the Swimming Topwater Popping Frog by a guy named Tony Tomsu. I don't know anything about him other than he came up with this pattern. And so let me get the camera here. Okay.
Oh, very nice.
So this is what it looks like. It's a very simple fly. Same thing using that thin foam, just like he was talking about, the craft foam, probably about an 1/8 inch thick.
What size hook is that on, Jim?
That is on a size 6. So the material for the hook, I use a size 6 hook, and this is the Bass Bug hooks. It's a TMC 8089, but it's got that nice big wide gape that whenever I'm tying, I tie this for bass, so I always like to have the wide gapes for the bass. They have big mouths and they will take a big hook like that. As far as the foam goes, it's just that same kind of craft foam. So a lot of times I'll tie it in olive and white, but I've also tied it in olive and yellow and black. You can tie it in all different kind of colors. And you can also get the foam. It's actually got the frog dots on it. So when I'm going to tie up a bunch of these, I'll order some of that stuff.
Jim, do you just punch those out or do you cut them?
So yeah, let me get to that. So, and then for legs, I use silly legs. So these are the barred crazy legs. But just about any kind of rubber, the round rubber works fine. I kind of like this kind of the material because you'll notice on each end there's a tab that holds all the pieces together, and I find that you'll see later where that'll come in handy.
Is it? Are those legs flat silicone?
Yes.
Okay.
But you can use round. You can use any kind. You can see the ones that are on here right now is just the round striped legs. So really anything that you want. For thread, when I'm tying with foam, I like to use this flat wax nylon. It's 210 denier. I mean, you could get by with using the 6/0 or the 140 or whatever, but when I'm tying with foam, I like my thread to be soft and thick so it doesn't cut into the foam when you're tying it. So, I mean, if you were tying with 8/0 or 70 denier or whatever, that'll have a tendency to cut into the foam. So I like the flat wax GSP. That's another good one to use when you're tying with foam. And then the eyes, usually I have these, they're a stick-on eye, although I also put a little bit of a super glue on there. But I ran out of those, so tonight I'm going to be tying on with googly eyes, and some people swear by the googly eyes. So again, whatever you want to tie. I use 2 types of super glue when I'm tying. I use the thin Z-Mint, which is a very thin formula of super glue. And then I use the gel super glue, the ultra gel. So for different parts, I use that. So the first step is to cut out the little pieces of foam here. Now you can do that with a pair of scissors, and I've seen it done, and people who are probably more talented than I would find that very easy. But I actually have a tool that punches them out. So it's basically, you got a razor blade in a holder, and these come in 3 different sizes. I think it's like 2, 6, and 10. And this is the medium size. This is the 6. And I assume that designation has to do with the fact that it works perfectly with a size 6 bass bug hook. But so you take your cutter comes with a foam hard rubber back, and so you basically take your foam and you put it on the hard back, and then you take your cutter, and then you press down real hard, and it cuts out these nice little pre-cut things. So it's probably the only tool that I have that only functions for one thing and one pattern, but you know, I really like these things, so it makes the job a little bit easier. So we're going to start out putting our hook in the vise. You're going to punch out your little pieces, and then I take red magic marker and I color the inside so they have a nice red mouth there. Put the lipstick inside there for whatever, for effect. It's something that, so I put this magic marker on at least 15 minutes ago. So I'll either put it on and let it sit for a while, or I'll put it on at the very end, because otherwise you'll just get magic marker everywhere. So you have the pieces cut out, you have your hook. I'm going to take your thread. I'm going to start it about 1/4 inch behind the eye. And I'm going to lay down a double layer of thread. So I'll go all the way back to the bend of the hook, and then come all the way back to the front of the hook. Cut off the excess. And I'll take the thin super glue and I'll put just the slimmest amount of super glue on that thread, and it kind of holds everything into place. And super glue is kind of one of those things that the less you use, the better off you are. If it gets thick, it takes a long time for it to set up, and but you put it on thin and it'll set up very quickly. So you'll notice on these pieces, the first starts out, it is a long, narrow piece, and then it starts getting wider and wider. Then there's a little indent right about there, and then it forms the head. So basically, the 2 tie-in points that I have is right where it starts to get wider, and this indent point right here. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to line this indent up with the bend of the hook right here. I'm going to hold the foam on my side of the hook, and then I'm going to do spiral wraps that, basically soft wraps all the way down. Try not to compress the foam. The more you compress it, the less it'll float. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing with the tail. I'm going to put it on, and again, do a spiral wrap back to the end, and maybe at the very end, I'll crank it down a little bit. Then I'm going to bring the thread back to about maybe a 1/4 inch in front of that intersection right there. And I'm going to get out the silly legs. So I've seen them, I've tied them with 2 strands in front, 2 in the back. This Tony Tomsu, he does 1 strand in the back, 1 strand in the front. So I've seen people do 4 strands in the front and 10 strands in the back. But I finally decided I like 2 strands in the front and 4 in the back. So that's just the way I do it. So I'm going to go ahead, I cut out the 2 strands and I'll lay it aside. And then I'll cut out 4 strands. That's about 4 strands. It's 4 or 5. I'm going to cut those out. Then I'm going to take the 4 or 5 strands. I think that's a 4-strander. And I am going to wrap it around the barrel of the bobbin and split it right in half. So I'm touching both ends and wrapping that around the bobbin here. Then I'm going to bring that all up so the legs are sitting on top. And I'll do a couple of wraps around here just to get that material on there. I will divide it half and half. So half the material is going to go on the far side of the hook. Half the material is going to be on the close side of the hook. And again, I'm going to do some wide spiral wraps. Let me turn this so maybe you can see it a little better. Do some wide spiral wraps like this, just to hold that material back like that. Then I'm going to bring the thread forward till maybe a little more than a 1/4 inch away from the eye. And I'm going to take the 2 strands. I'm going to start out the same way. I'm going to fold it over. And then I'm going to bring it all up to the top of the hook, do a few wraps around so it's on there. And then I'm going to, same thing, I'm going to divide the material so half is on one side, half is on the other. But this time I'm going to do figure-8 wraps. So I'm going behind one piece and in front of the second piece. Now I'm going in front of the first piece, behind the second piece. Oops.
You need another hand, Jim.
That would be nice. And so, so anyway, I'll do that 3 or 4 times. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the material that's on the back legs to kind of point backwards. The material on the front legs, I'm just trying to get them to go straight out, perpendicular to the hook. Okay, got my figure-8 wraps. Now I'm going to take the foam, and like I say, I'm going to line up this indent here with a thread, which is about maybe a little 1/8 to 3/16 inch behind the eye. I'm going to squeeze it down a little bit, do a soft wrap, do a couple of those, then pull a little bit tighter. And I'm going to flip the whole thing back over. I'm going to do the same thing with the front. Get the legs out of the way. I'll line up that indent. Hope you can see that without with my fat fingers in the way. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with a fairly soft wrap right at that indent. Do like a couple of those, and then I'm going to pull it a little bit tighter. So that has a tendency to work that mouth open. So I'll do 4 or 5 wraps around, and then I'm going to open up the mouth. I'm going to come through on the close side of the mouth, and I'm going to do a couple of wraps around the shank and then come out and feed off the far side of the mouth. And then I'll do a couple of wraps again, and then I'm going to come back through where I start on the far side, do a couple of wraps, and then come back to the close side. And what that does is it just kind of places that material so it's right on the center of that hook. Then I'll come back, I'll pull the lips back and make a head. I'll do a whip finish. So it can be a pain in the neck to do it, use your Mattarelli tool or whatever you want to call your traditional tool. I find it easier. This is probably the only time I ever use a half hitch tool. So I do the hitches and put them on just because you're fighting the mouth. The mouth is covering the end of the hook, and it can be a pain in the neck sometimes. So that's that. I'm going to cut the thread. And then I'm going to tie knots in the legs. So what I do is for the front legs, I'm trying to tie the knot in pretty close to the center of the leg, somewhere between the center and closer to the body. So I take a forceps. I will do a loop around. I'll grab the end and pull it through. And this is when those tabs come in really handy. Now, if you're only doing like two strands like this, it's not that big a deal. But if you were doing 6 or 8 strands in the back here, trying to grab all of those at the same time can be a hassle. So I'm going to do the same thing in the front. Do a loop around. I'm going to grab the end. We're going to pull it through. We're going to try to work that knot pretty close to the center. Then on the back legs, I'm going to tie knots, but I'm going to try to keep the knot closer to the very end. So I'm going to do the loop around, grab the end, pull it through, try to keep that knot probably about a ½ inch away from the end, and do the same thing with the last one. Do a loop around, grab the end, pull it through, and keep that knot close to the end. And I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut probably about 3/8 of an inch past the knot. So that's going to open it up. So now our little frog has 2 little fingers on the front, and it's got 4 little toes in the back and all. So then I'm going to put the eyeballs on. And again, I usually use a stick-on eyeball, but I ran out of those. But even when I do, I'll put on super glue. So I'm going to put a little dab of super glue right where I want the eyes. And again, just the smallest amount you can possibly put on there so it'll set up very quickly. And that was probably too. And then, okay, so this will be the trick. Let's see how many Google eyes I have to pick up to get 2 of them on the frog here. Got 1. Ooh, 2 for 2. It's my lucky day.
You're hired.
And then I just, press those down. and they will dry. And at this point, they always recommend to take more super glue, and usually I'll use the gel glue, and I'll put, again, just the smallest amount on the inside of this material right here. And I'll do the same thing on the other side, and then I will hold it together and leave it there till it dries. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because would be wasting 35 seconds, 45 seconds or whatever, waiting for it to dry. But it ends up looking like this. You can see that it's closed there. And honestly, I'm not sure why they do that. I don't know if that's a matter of trying to capture more air in there so it floats better, or it holds the legs in place. So, you know, and I'm actually going to leave a couple of those open, and I'm going to see if it makes any difference. But that's the instructions say to do that all the time. So that's what I've done in the past. And well, so that's it. So it's a very simple.
To get a Kermit waiver from the Muppet Company.
Yeah. Right. There you go. So
Jim, do you have a picture of proof that this actually works?
Do I well, let's see. I don't know. I'll have to dig through my pictures. Well, I'll tell you it works, but I don't know that I have.
Gotta have pictures, man.
Oh, good idea. I'll tell you what, the next time I catch a fish on it, I'll take a picture and send it out. But yeah, I fish, like I say, I fish it just like I fish poppers. You know, typical with bass, I'm always casting towards structure, to drop-offs, to rocks, to things that are in the water. I mean, bass are predators, so they like to hang out in places where they can't be seen very well, but they can see well outside. So think of them as muggers. They're going to hang out at those places. So those are the places that you cast to. And then, you know, you can vary the retrieve. You can, if you bring it in very quickly, it pops just like a popper. Or, you know, you've seen frogs swim enough times that they'll do a couple of strokes and then they'll sit there and then do a couple of strokes. So, you know, so you just change up the retrieve until you finally get a strike. But
do you tie on a weed guard?
Yes, you can. And as a matter of fact, most instructions I have seen, they use a weed guard, and they use like maybe 30-pound monofilament. So they will tie the monofilament in the back, just like when you tie the first two pieces on, they tie the monofilament in. Then when you get done making the body, they'll take their bodkin and they'll poke a hole in the bottom of the mouth here. They'll bring that weed guard around and bring it up through here and then tie it off in the front there and then cut off the excess. So yes, you can do that. I've seen it done with, you know, 2 strands, one on each side, or a single strand. Honestly, I just don't do that because I just don't, you know. I mean, if I get hung up and lose a frog, I got a gazillion of them. I'm tying on another one. So I don't have anything against weed guards. I just I never bothered with them.
Do you ever fish with a mouse?
Yeah, not very often, and I've never really caught anything with it, but I'm sure they're very, very effective. I just, you know, I have so many poppers and so many of these things that I always have a mouse or two in my box, and I just never get around to taking them out. So, but I'm sure they're very, very effective.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, folks, I'm going to have to give up this computer to my wife for a meeting. I'll show back up later on my phone. Mick, if you keep an eye for me to pop them back up. But
I'll be looking for you.
Question for all you Missouri fishermen, that you had split the extra money for getting a $10 conservation card and carry in your wallet instead of your license, and realize that it's exactly the same as last year's. I was thinking that it would be year specific, but apparently not. So if you've ever wondered what the heck those things are, if you've never gotten one, it just gives you a waterproof card with your conservation number so that the warden can look up or access and know what permits you do or don't have. So you don't have to worry about your paper copy of your license disintegrating in your vest or something like that. But it appears that you only need to do it once, not every year.
So what about the trout tag?
It's all on there. They look up in your number.
All on there.
And then they just look up that number in their computer database and it'll show all the licenses and
Really?
stamp
Get the license at?
you've purchased. They call it Missouri Conservation Card.
It's like a $2 or $5 extra charge is what it is.
Yeah. But just, you don't have to worry so much about having to tape up or not getting your other license wet and disintegrating on you. But it appears you only need to do it once.
And Chris, if you're from Missouri and you're fishing Missouri and you're over 65, you don't need a license.
Correct.
You do need a trout tag if you're going to keep trout, and probably if you're doing winter catch and release. But you can also buy a lifetime license after 62 for, I can't remember how much it is. It's really cheap. And then that covers your trout tags too.
For the rest of your life?
Yes.
Is your
Yes.
conservation permit card?
And it reloads. You'll actually, if you do it online, you get a notification and then it'll be an auto charge for your fishing, for your trout tag. Anyway, with the conservation card that Terry was showing. And so it'll actually reload anybody who's not, who doesn't, who's not exempt. It'll reload for you.
That's what I do.
Yeah. It worked seamlessly this year, and you can get the White River boundary waters and things too, in regards to the kind of dual state on that too.
What do you mean, like Arkansas, going down there and fish?
Yeah, you'd look it up specific if it covers your area. I mean, it's not good for the full state, but it is good for waters that cross over. But Jim, that was excellent. Thank you for your frog. He was really cute.
Hey, you're quite welcome.
He was really cute too.
Yeah, it's a great pattern. Like I say.
Very good.
All right, Michael, we're ready for the finale here.
Okay. Les, just in case, these are not, I didn't have the fancy foam that Jim did, but I have landed a 2.5 pound bass on one of those frogs.
There you go. Yeah, but you have a picture of it because Les isn't going to believe you. Until
I'm sure I do, but I don't know where the hell it's at.
Les doesn't take anybody's word.
Hey.
Hey, if I'm going to spend the time to tie it, I want to know it actually works.
Oh, I guarantee you it works.
It does
Anyway,
work. I wouldn't go so far to say that it outdoes poppers, but I'm sure it does as well as poppers.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. Lily pads, it's great. Rivers, it's great. Anyway, what I'm doing tonight, and Amy said your favorite material, and my favorite material is the one I'm tying at that point in time. I don't really have a favorite. I like them all. But I also remembered a fly that my APL and I fished with, 10 or 12 years ago, maybe even a little longer, tied them up, fished with them. And y'all probably know, or you probably should know, Jack's Garside Sparrow. It was first introduced.
Oh, yeah.
First introduced between 45 and 50 years ago in a magazine called Fly Fishing for Trout in Missouri. And it's really not a hard tie. I've already started the thread and debarbed the hook. And it's from, basically it's thread and pheasant tail. The feathers come off the rump. The tail, try to make it pretty square, is about, they say about half the shank length, and I'm doing it about the gap width is what I'm doing, have been doing on it, and it kind of compress it together. And by the way, it's a 2X long nymph. And what I am using is, if you can see that, a 52-62 and a size 10. We, like I said, my buddy, my APL and I fish these over at the White River over on around Cotter and Mountain Home, and for many years tied them, fished them, tied them mostly olive and tan, but basically tie the tail on. Down just about where the barb of the hook was. And I've got a blend, and there's probably 24 videos about this fly on YouTube. And we always put lead on it because we were fishing the White River, and usually the water was deep and fast. So we would always put, but every video I looked at for the past week has not had any lead on it. I did see one guy put wire. I've never put wire on this fly. That doesn't mean you can't. But you just kind of taper your body up to, I know most of y'all put.
That's a lot of dubbing.
Say what?
That's a lot of dubbing.
Well, I'm not going to use it all. I'm going to use about 1/5 of it. And what I do is when I put it on there, it looks thick. But what I'll do, this is an old Dave Whitlock trick, was if you'll grab the dubbing and start pushing it forward and holding it, it will thin out.
Yeah, you're pulling it on the thread.
Huh?
I said it looks like you're pulling it and thinning it out on the thread.
Yep. And it's actually, as you wrap it around,
yeah,
dubbing is wrapping around the thread. So you don't have to keep rewrapping it.
Right.
What I want to do is build up a little bit of a taper right here.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
So that I get to, and see, I'm going to pull most of this off right here. But as you spin it around that way, holding the dubbing, it wraps around the thread as you bring it forward. Then
what kind of dubbing are you using? Is that a super fine, or is that got some hairs?
Well, actually, I blended it up myself. It's a combination of squirrel, rabbit, superfine.
Okay.
One of the videos, the guy was using red fox squirrel and superfine or antron.
Okay.
Another one was using rabbit and antron and some superfine. You know, whatever. It's just a matter of what color you want it to be. But what I've got right here is a combination of rabbit, squirrel, and antron or superfine, really. Now, this is where it gets interesting. And I'm assuming that most of you know what an aftershaft feather is. I had one here I wanted to show you. If you pull your feathers off, and there's a little bitty feather back behind it, and that's called the aftershaft. And it is extremely fragile. And that's what we're going to do in the last step, is use that feather. But for the wing, I'm gonna take the feather that it came from, and I want the feathers to reach most of the way back, maybe halfway down the tail to part of the way on the tail. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tie this in with the concave side next to the hook. And by the way, I'm using a 8/0 thread. They tell you to use a 6/0 or a 140. This is a 70 denier. I've got a bad habit of putting too much thread on my flies. So I try to go small. And the only drawback, then you grab your hackle, if I can get my pliers to work. Like I said, I don't want to grab all the other stuff. Okay. Grab it, stand it up, and I milk the feathers back. And I'm not going to do a lot. I'm going to do about one, maybe 1.5 turns is all I want to do. But I'm milking the feathers back as I go. And there, I'm going to tie that one off. I'm fixing to lose it if I don't watch it. That's the only bad thing about those hackle pliers. Sometimes they come apart. Push these back. And I'll clip this piece off right here. And I won't throw it away. Well, other than I drop it on the floor, because you can use it as your tail for your next fly. But I'm going to milk all these feathers back and kind of lock them down as best I can. And this is where it gets, I don't know if you've ever tied one of these, but this is where it gets real fun. I'm a very sarcastic person. So I use adjectives like that in a very sarcastic way. But I'm taking a couple of these after shaft feathers and I'm going to tie them in, and that's going to be the collar on this collar. Some people call it, some of the guys have called it a head. I've called it a collar. Always have. And I do not use hackle pliers with these things because they are more delicate. Although I know one thing I'm fixing to do. I'm fixing to half hitch this. And if I can do this without knocking my camera off, I'm gonna very gingerly wrap this around the head. Hopefully I'm going to very gingerly wrap this around the head of this fly. And I'll make several, and I'll pull these back too. And I'll make several turns of this. It's a real easy fly to tie. And like I said, my buddy, my fly fishing buddy and my APL, about 10 or 12 years ago, we tied these all the time and fished them over on the White and the Norfolk and did very well with it. And for some reason, which I don't remember, we no longer do that. And this, like I said, how soft this is, once you get it locked down, That's how easy it is to take it apart. The other thing, I think Jim Masua, beginner fly tying, does this fly, and he puts glue on it. I don't. And almost every other video you watch, they don't. And the reason being is that the glue is very hard to keep out of these aftershaft feathers. And when you get them glued down, they don't work like they're supposed to. They don't flutter and breathe. So I'll do 2 real big 6 or 7 turn whip finishes.
Oh, I like that.
And like these 2 I've tied with weight. I mean, I'll tell you what we used to do. I mean, Bob Wicken, like I said, my APL, he's a big fan of lead. We used to tie these with 25 and 30 hundredths lead in them, like 7 to 10 wraps a piece. I've got probably 12.5 wraps of 15 thousandths lead in these 2 that I did earlier.
So the one you just tied is, you fish it like a wet fly then?
Yes, you fish it like a wet fly. And actually, one of the guys talked about fishing it as a merger.
Yeah.
Off tackle.
Can you put a bead?
And I can see where you could do that too. I got a pretty heavy collar on this one right here, but I use 2 aftershaft. What generally happens is when I put 2 aftershafts on there, about the second turn, one of them breaks off. So, but this time they didn't.
Can you put a bead head on them?
Sir?
A bead head.
Yeah, this has got a big head on it. And these things, it's just like marabou, you know, this aftershaft feather, because it'll undulate in the water, just like the gills of a fish.
I like it.
Or a small darter or one of those type.
No, what I said.
Mike, what's the name of that fly?
It's called the sparrow. It's
The sparrow?
Yeah.
Like the bird?
Jake Garside sparrow.
Okay.
And like I said, there's probably 24 videos on YouTube.
By Jack Gartside.
Jake Garside. And like I said, it was first introduced in the fly fishing for trout in Missouri back like 45, 50 years ago. It's where it was, where it originated. But I don't know why we quit using it, because it was a very effective streamer. And that's the way we fished it. Like, you know, because like it over at Rim Shoals or the Narrows or Roundhouse, you've got some deep water and you've got some fast water. So what we were trying to do was get it down and get it down fast.
So could you put a tungsten bead on it or not?
Yeah, you could. I don't know. I guess you could. I don't know what impact that would have on, of course, I would use a longer shank hook, like a 3 or 4X instead of a 2X.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have room for that soft tackle and the collar. And this collar, like he said, this collar is pretty big. I don't know whether you'd call it luck or just whatever, that both of those aftershaft feathers wound around all the way. I mean, you all know how delicate a pheasant hurl is, peacock hurl. Yes, this stuff is about 2 or 3 times more fragile than that.
Wow.
Yeah, to generally answer Walt's question, if you can do something to any fly. And any question that says, can you do something to a fly? That's why we tie our own flies, because you can do anything you want. If you have an idea and you think, hey, you know, it would be good with a bead head, or it would be good with a different material, you can do it.
You can change it and do it however you want to. That's exactly right. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what he had said.
Yeah.
Hey,
Any
thank you.
questions? Any more questions?
I'd like to see that with a root beer colored glass bead. Really would.
That might be pretty good.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about that. You know, if you go, this is a 5262, which is a 2X nymph hook. And they tie these, the people talk about tying them down to a size 4 and up to a size 14. I can't imagine how you would have room on a 14, but that's because I'm not that dexterous. And but they talk about size 4s and size 6 for pike and walleye. And I wouldn't know anything about that. I really don't get much, definitely don't get much action on a pike.
I definitely like the look of that fly. I tie fox squirrel nymphs the same size.
Yes.
And I've had very good luck with those, and I could see where that would be another very good fly to add to my fly.
Yeah, that's an impressive wet fly to me, a modern wet fly. Really impressive.
Yeah. Like I said, we used it all the time, like 10 or 12 years ago, and then all of a sudden we just didn't do it anymore. And I don't remember why, or it just happened that way. And we always had luck on it when we used it.
Yeah, like it.
So, anyway,
Nice tie. Really nice tie.
good. I hope you learned something. I hope you
I did.
learned something about it. Like I said, there's at least a couple of dozen videos out there. You can type in sparrow, you can type in Jack's Garside sparrow, and it'll bring up. I just trying to remember once again. I've looked at about a half a dozen of them this past week.
You know, I got a couple of Jack Garside books. Actually, they're about the size of pamphlets, but I never really tied a lot of what he came up with, except for the gurgler. Now that is a smallmouth bass fly right there.
Yeah, the gurgler. Oh.
In Virginia, we tie Carolina blue and tan.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. On one of our little trips to Florida, I fishing a large gurgler. Was fishing a large gurgler, and as I picked up my fly to recast it, the largest redfish I have ever seen in my life comes sailing up out of the water after.
Yep.
But anyway, any questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Well, that was a good fly. Thanks.
Sure.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
All right. Guys, I'm about ready. I just sent Meg a text too. I'm going to peel off this call. So great job, everybody. That was a great month. Appreciate everybody jumping in with kind of their little tricks and hacks and all that other fun stuff too. And just
good.
It was really some great tips. So I think at our request from Kat, so who's trying to set up her tying area, maybe we'll start off March 1st, clean up your tying areas, clean up your fly rooms, and just a brief, we'll just kind of flip around on the camera, a little bit more social as far as not really a fly planned, but just kind of showing your tying spaces. And, I will show you my cave, as my family refers to it, my fly cave. I will show you my big pile that misses the trash can.
My room
So,
may be condemned.
So, and
Yeah.
and if you guys haven't figured out, so most of the weeks I try to send out the reminder. Sometimes I actually send it out too fast, so I send it out tomorrow for the next week. If you actually just flag that, you'll be able to find the link. Our link number never changes on that, but in case you don't see a reminder, we're not canceling for any reason. So we might even pull up the Bennett Spring trout cam for next Monday. It is opening day for our catch and keep season here.
Wow.
That's right.
I will not be out there.
No.
That is not really my thing. I'll wait till it a little settles down, maybe mid-March, maybe near the end of March. Yeah, we'll just kind of pop around from room to room and show the tying area. So gives you a full week. You've got plenty of notice on the cleanup. And then we'll get kind of back into some different routines too.
I need
We'll
a
save
front
it.
end loader.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, put away all the, blur the background if you don't want too much of it. But we'll do that next week, and I hope to send out a reminder. But in case I forget, we'll be here same time, same bat channel next week.
I guess we have to take down our Playboy pictures.
I don't know.
I ain't touching that one.
I've been down in the basement at Hargrove's. I'm pretty sure I'm okay. I'm pretty sure I won't blush at anything that you've got up.
Amy, take your pictures down, please.
Yeah. Anyway, so that derailed real fast. Okay. So anyway, we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank y'all. Dave, I appreciate those tips.
Really got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Bye now.
Yeah, you guys have a good night.
Night.
Yeah, bye. Good night.
Good night,
Have a good
guys.
one.
Good
Good night, everybody.
week, everybody.